consequences to him.
Fight your battles on your knees.
We reap what we sow, more than we sow, and later than we sow.
Stand tallest and strongest on our knees.
If necessary, God will move heaven and earth to show us His will.
How do you respond when someone praises you? How do you respond when they criticize you? Well, the way you and I respond to either one of these tells us a lot about ourselves, or at least tells other people something about us. When you respond to praise in the right way, it can motivate to, shall we say, motivate you to do your best, look your best, be your best, in the spirit of humility and thanksgiving. When you respond to praise in the wrong way, it can be devastating and destructive. When you respond to criticism in the right way, it can develop you, strengthen you, build you up. When you respond to criticism in the wrong way, you lose opportunity. And oftentimes you may miss what God is trying to say to you. There are many verses in the Scripture that tell us how very important it is that you and I learn how to respond to criticism and praise. So what I want you to do is I want you to turn to a couple of verses in a moment. Then I'm going to read from the Living Bible translation, because it is so crystal clear in the book of Proverbs, a number of verses that have to do with criticism and praise. But I want you to turn first of all to this 27th chapter of the book of Proverbs, and we'll have some notes on the screen, and I trust that you will take good notes today, because here's the truth. All of us have to learn how to deal with criticism and praise. We love the praise oftentimes. We don't like the criticism. But it's just as important that you and I learn how to deal with praise as it is to learn how to deal with criticism. 27th chapter of the Proverbs, look if you will in this first and second verses. Do not boast about tomorrow. You do not know what a day may bring forth. Let another praise you and not your own mouth. Did you get that? Say amen. Let another praise you, not your own mouth. Then if you will look in the 21st verse of the same chapter, the crucible is for silver, the furnace is for gold, and each one is tested by the praise accorded him. That is, God says we're tested by the praise that is accorded him. Now, I'm going to have all of these verses, references on the screen so you can write them down. But what I want you to do for a moment, I want you to look at me. And I want you to listen carefully while I read these verses, that you can jot down the verse reference. But I want you to listen to them carefully. These all come out of the Living Bible translation, and they're all true. It's just a lot simpler. Listen to this. Proverbs 10:17. Anyone willing to be corrected is on the pathway to life. Anyone refusing has lost his chance. Proverbs 13:18. If you refuse criticism, you'll end in poverty and disgrace. If you accept criticism, you're on the road to fame. Proverbs 15, verse 31-32. If you profit from constructive criticism, you'll be elected to the wise men's hall of fame. But to reject criticism is to harm yourself and your own best interest. Then 28:13. A man, of course, or a woman, who refuses to admit his mistakes can never be successful. But if he confesses and forsakes them, he gets another chance. Proverbs 29:1. The man who is often reproved but refuses to accept criticism will suddenly be broken and never have another chance. Now that's rather powerful. And what you find here, you find all of these warnings about the right response to praise and criticism. Now, if that's something that happened to us every once in a while, that would be one thing. But the truth is, all of us have to deal with it. We have to deal with praise with some people. We have to deal with criticism from some other people. Sometimes both from the same person. It may be that you live with someone who is very critical, or someone who just thinks you're heaven sent. Whatever it may be, it is just as important to learn how to respond to one of them as it is the other. So let's begin, if you will. Let's begin with this whole issue of responding to criticism. How should we respond to criticism? Now let's agree on this. It doesn't make any difference who it comes from. It doesn't make any difference who it comes through. It doesn't make any difference if it's valid criticism or invalid, if it's true or untrue, if it comes from an angry person or one that's trying to help you. How do you and I respond in a godly fashion to criticism? So let's talk about, first of all, the wrong ways. This is how you do not respond to criticism. And the first simple answer is this: you don't get angry. You don't become angry. You say, well, but if I just can't help it, then hold it in. Don't show anger if someone is criticizing you, and you may feel it. Secondly, don't allow yourself to be defensive. Don't begin to defend yourself, especially even before you've heard it all. And sometimes when somebody comes on strong and criticizes, our defenses start rising, and we can just feel it coming on. We get ready to have an attack. Well, what's happened is we're not listening any longer. We're building our defense while they're talking. And a third thing that we do not want to do, and that is to attack. In other words, if somebody says, well, let me tell you something that I see in you that I think you need to deal with. Well, let me just tell you something. I've seen a few things in you, and what I've seen in you, and I mean you're just on the attack. The war is on. What happens is you've ceased to listen. You don't even know where they're coming from necessarily, and it's a bad testimony. You're a child of God. The Bible says we're to love each other. Well, that doesn't mean unless I'm attacked. Oh, yes, it does. At least, listen, if you can't love them, tolerate them. I mean, at least, if you can't love them, at least be kind. And so, this is the wrong way. And then, of course, you may respond in this way. You may respond by being absolutely silent and totally ignore them. In other words, to be silent and ignore them says to them, I have no sense of value in what you're saying to me. I do not consider what you're saying important, and therefore I don't consider you important. And so, of course, one way to respond is fearfully. Oh, my goodness, what's going on now? I'm going to lose my job or whatever it might be. And then another way to respond, which is the wrong way, is just pout. Don't you hate pouting? Now, let me just say this. I don't know of anything much worse than a pouting woman. I don't. I'm sorry, I don't. I'm sure that a woman would say, I don't know anything much worse than a pouting man. Because it's a person who sulks and they won't tell you what they feel and they just sort of angry on the inside or they misunderstood and they just go around moping. You know what? Nobody wants to live with somebody like that. Now, I didn't say do anything about it. I just said moping and pouting. That's not the way you respond to criticism. Just face it and let's deal with it. I'm going to show you in a few moments how we deal with it. So all of those are the wrong ways to deal with someone's criticism. So we have to ask the question is this: why do people respond that way? Why does a person just want to get on the defensive and want to attack? Well, one of the primary reasons is a poor self-image. Let's say, for example, that you grew up in a home where the husband and wife or the mother and the father, they were at it at each other all the time. He's always criticizing her and she's always criticizing them. And then you, as a child growing up, you just sort of got the spillovers. And that is, when they got tired of criticizing one of them, each other, they dumped it on you. And so you grew up in an atmosphere of criticism. Not praise, but criticism. Nothing was ever right by one of them. So what happens? If you grew up in that kind of atmosphere, that's just the part of your thinking. And so you probably said, well, I'll never do that. Don't say that. Think positive, not what you'll never do, but what you're going to do. And so many people grow up in an atmosphere of criticism rather than praise, and it's just a part of the way they think. That's the environment. And interesting enough, it becomes an environment they seem to be comfortable with because that's what they grew up with. That is not the way you respond, but one of the primary reasons is a poor self-image. A second reason is this, and that is the feeling of insecurity. When a person is just insecure anyway, they're insecure maybe about their marriage, about their schooling, about their relationships, about their job, they just feel insecure, I'm not sure I'm measuring up, then you come along and criticize them. All you're doing is just dumping fuel, just dumping gasoline on the little smoldering embers down here that just burn all the time anyway. Well, I knew somebody was going to get on my case. Well, you don't have to respond that way, but oftentimes that's the way people respond. And if a person is insecure, almost any kind of criticism is like fuel on the burning embers because they just sort of live with that. If you're insecure, nothing is exactly settled, and any kind of criticism, of course, just feeds the fact that, well, you know, I'm not what I ought to be. I wish I could be better, but I'm not. I've done my best, and I'm being criticized. Very, very devastating to a person who doesn't know how to handle criticism. Then, of course, another reason is perfectionism. You say, well, nobody's perfect. Here's what perfectionism is. Perfectionism doesn't mean that you are perfect, or that you're sinless, or that you always do things just right. Doesn't mean that you always say the right thing. Perfectionism is a form of enslavement. That means you have set your standard so high that anything less than perfect is unacceptable to you. And what you don't realize is if you set your standard for perfection, because even that oftentimes is a sense of insecurity, you're going to do it exactly right. Well, all of us make mistakes. All of us blow it at times, and all of us we sin, and we have to deal with these things, and so we're not perfect. So when you set your standard to perfection, you have enslaved yourself, and when you do that, and somebody comes along and criticizes you, everything in you rises for this reason. You know, you say, well, now wait a minute. I do my best. I give it my best, and you do. I give it my best. I do my best. I want to look my best. I try my best. Now, what are you doing criticizing me when, listen, I give it my best. I can't do any better. And when I've done my very best at everything, and you come along and you see a person who lives up here in an unreal world. They can't respond right. For the simple reason, here's what they do. They take your criticism. It may be helpful criticism. It may come from a heart of genuine love. You may appreciate them for many other things. But when they hear you criticize them, they take it, listen, not just personal, they interpret that as you criticizing their personhood, their character. Now watch this carefully. It's one thing for someone to criticize your work, your labor, or some action or something that you say. It's something else to criticize your personhood, your character. That's what you are. So you and I have to be sure that we understand what's going on when somebody is criticizing us. And so if a person is a perfectionist, they just can't handle criticism when they have done their very best. Now watch this. A perfectionist oftentimes is also a procrastinator. And here's the reason. If they can't do it perfect, they'll excuse themselves for not getting the job done. I've seen this over and over and over again. If I can't do it perfect, I'm not going to do it. And they don't say that. But what they do, they procrastinate. Put it off, put it off, put it off. I'm going to do one of these two. Put it off, put it off, put it off until I can do it absolutely perfect. Oftentimes they're procrastinators, and that's what generates the sense of criticism, which may be the whole attitude is a matter of helping that person understand why they procrastinate. Then, of course, there's the whole issue of just pure old sinful pride. Arrogance and pride. One of the reasons that people cannot accept criticism is they have this pride, this ego, this arrogance about them. They're important. They're superior. What do you mean? What are you doing down there looking up and criticizing me? Well, you see, God says, well, maybe we better look at a couple of verses here, because God makes it very clear in the 29th chapter of the Proverbs. Look there for a moment, if you will. 29th chapter and the 23rd verse, and listen to what he says. He says, now, when the Bible says a man, we're talking about men and women. A man or woman's pride will bring him or her low. That is, it will damage you in some fashion. But a humble spirit obtains honor. Then go back to the 16th chapter for a moment and look, if you will, in the 18th verse, and look what the Scripture says. Well, let's go to the 5th verse first. 16 verse 5. Everyone who's proud in heart is an abomination to the Lord. That means he just doesn't like it. It sort of smells to him. Verse 18. Pride goes before destruction, and a haughty spirit before stumbling. God's warnings to us about pride and arrogance. So, if a person cannot accept criticism, it's for one of those primary reasons. And so, you look at your own life and you ask yourself the question, well, can I accept criticism? Is it possible? In other words, can I not? And if not, is it one of these reasons? And if it is, listen, watch this carefully. That doesn't make you necessarily a sinner. What it says is there's something in your life that you need to examine. Listen, when somebody criticizes me, does my childhood rise up in me and want to defend myself? When my father would criticize my mother and it hurt me so deeply, and I see somebody else doing that, does rise up in me. Ask yourself the question, why? Is it because of my self-image? Is it because of my insecurity? Is it because of my pride? Why do I do it? And if that's an issue with you, that your first response is anger and defensiveness and want to attack, if you will ask yourself the question why, it'll help you learn to do it. Now, what's the consequences in a person's life when they cannot accept criticism? What are the consequences? Well, look at all these verses we just read. If you can't accept criticism, you lost your chance. If you can't accept criticism, you're on your way to poverty and disgrace. You can't handle it, then you're going to harm yourself in your own best interest. And then if you can't handle it, what happens is, if you can handle it, you get another chance. But if you can't, oftentimes you don't get another chance. And so these scriptures are warnings to us about dealing with criticism, because we're going to have to do it. Now think about this. And I'm grateful God put this in the Scripture, because look at Jesus, for example. First of all, the reason I know all of us are going to be criticized is because we're all human. Jesus not only was human, he was divine. He was absolutely God in human flesh. Well, did he get criticized? You name it, they went after his case. He couldn't eat on the right day. He couldn't associate with the right people. In other words, they were after him all the time, criticizing him for this and criticizing him for that. And here he was, perfect. So you and I can expect criticism, and we can expect for people either to misunderstand us, and oftentimes people's misunderstanding brings about all kind of criticism. And when we look at it or we hear it, we think, where in the world are they? How could they believe that? Now watch this carefully. I want to say it again. Our responses must not be determined by who they are, or what the channel is, or if it's valid or invalid. You and I are responsible to God to respond the right way, no matter what the channel, or no matter what the source, or the nature of their criticism. We're godly men and women, and we learn to respond in the right way. And so when we don't, there are absolutely very definite consequences. And one of them is this. If you can't accept criticism, you limit your potential to grow mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. Because all of us need to be corrected at times. For example, if you can't accept criticism from somebody, can you accept it from God? In other words, for example, when you're convicted of sin, that is a degree, shall we say, of criticism. God isn't pleased with what he sees. How do you respond? Well, God, nobody's perfect. What you've just said, you can't even receive criticism from God, when his criticism is always motivated by love. When a teenager, for example, cannot accept criticism from their parents, which their parent may be a godly person, loves that son or that daughter with all their heart, do anything in the world for them, sending into college, spending their money, and you can't accept criticism from your parent, maybe you need to stop and ask yourself the question, what's going on in my life? And so what you have to remember is this. You limit your potential to grow. You limit your potential to grow emotionally. And when you do that, for example, you naturally are going to find yourself separating yourself from people and people you love. How can a husband or wife live together in a loving relationship if neither one of them or one of them cannot accept criticism? We all make mistakes. We all make mistakes. And what happens is, as the scripture said a few moments ago, we suffer loss. Loss, for example, a person who cannot accept criticism will never learn how to love somebody. Nor will you ever learn how to be loved. Because you see, watch this, unconditional love sometimes has to confront us. And unconditional love can come on as what? As criticism. And it may be genuine, true criticism. If there's some habit in my life that needs to be corrected, or something that you continually do, maybe never even thought about it, and somebody finally brings it to your attention, it's not because they don't love you, it's because they care, because they love you. How can you have a loving relationship with someone that you built this wall, and everything is fine as long as don't criticize me? As long as I've got this wall up, I can't love. As long as that wall's up, I'll never be able to understand what unconditional love is like. Because there is an area of your life that is closed. I do not have to tell you, or maybe I do. If you've ever been genuinely loved by somebody, or maybe you haven't, unconditionally loved by someone, you know there can be no walls in that relationship. You can't say, you can have all of me but this. You can have my mind, my heart, my soul, my body, but when it comes to criticism, forget it. Don't enter that door. You can never have a loving relationship like that. And many people do not understand the consequences of not being able to deal with their criticism, because we're all going to have it. And so there's a penalty to pay. There are indeed consequences, and I think oftentimes it's hard for us to see them, especially if people around us are scared to death to be critical. Now, that's true in your home. It's true in your personal relationships. How many of you, all of us have friends. If you have friends that absolutely you cannot accept any criticism from them, I guarantee you they don't really like you as a friend. And in other words, true, genuine friendships allow for criticism. And I don't mean that it's all cutting and nasty. I mean, sometimes it might be a little cutting, and sometimes it may be gentle. But you can't have friendships with people who say, well, you know, we love so-and-so, but boy, don't you say anything negative about so-and-so, because if you do, I mean, it's all over. Well, you know what? Let me tell you something else. That is the poorest form of leadership I know. Don't criticize me. Don't question all of my decisions. Don't question anything. Just do what I tell you. You don't even want to work for somebody like that, number one. And number two, you can't even love somebody like that. And so what we do is we isolate ourselves from people that we love. We isolate ourselves on our job. We isolate ourselves in the home. And I remember many years ago now, we had a survey of college students, and one of the questions was, in relationship to your parents, what's the biggest problem you have? 95% of them said, my parents are never wrong. Now, I can still remember this. I can still remember the sight, what I heard, and what I felt. This father, and I had seen this enough, because I knew them, I'd seen this enough that on this occasion, this kid was about 12 or 13 years of age. And this father came down real strong in a very critical spirit. And I had seen that before. This time, I could feel the kind of awesome sense of being stifled emotionally. Just stifled. This boy could not say anything. He could not explain what was going on. And I wanted to say to that dad, why don't you get off of his case? I wanted to scream to him, lay off of this kid. Because it was devastating. It was devastating to me to have to watch such an erroneous display when I knew that it wasn't coming from love. We don't know how to handle criticism. We don't know how to give it. And so there are consequences, and of course, in the Scripture we saw the consequences here. Limits our abilities and isolates people and all the rest. Now, what's the proper response to criticism? Now, you want to jot these down. What's the proper response? Remember what he said. It doesn't make no difference where it's coming from, because sometimes criticism may come through your enemy, but God is allowing him to say it because it's something he wants to get your attention about. So it has nothing to do with the source. It has to do with how we respond. So what's the proper way to respond? Well, here's the first thing you do. You listen attentively and carefully. You listen to what they're saying attentively and carefully. Because what you want them to know is, I value you enough that I'm hearing what you're saying. Attentively and carefully. Number two, you look them right in the eye. And you keep quiet. You're silent. Hear them out. Hear them out. No matter what's going on, what you want to do is you want to hear them out. So quietly, silently, attentively, you listen to them. Look at it. Look them in the eye. Now ask yourself this question: is this a valid criticism? Is what I'm hearing, is this true of me? Be open. Is this true of me? Another question you might ask is God trying to say something to me? I may not like it. Oh, God, I may not like it. But Lord, are you trying to say something to me? And sometimes he will answer that quickly. Is God trying to say something to me? Remember now, you're listening carefully, and you're silent. You're not defending yourself. You're not attacking back. In other words, you allow them to say whatever they need to say, and your response is, thank you very much for bringing this to my attention. Thank you very much for bringing this to my attention. And you may say, I'm going to consider what you're saying to me. Now, sometimes that's the right answer for this reason, that what they're accusing you of may not be true. But you're saying to them, I'm going to consider what you're saying to me. And I appreciate you bringing it to my attention. And if it's a valid criticism, here's what you do. You say to them, I really appreciate you bringing this to my attention, and I need to ask you to forgive me. If you can't ask for forgiveness, then there's something deeply wrong inside. It says that your pride has overtaken your relationship to God. Because all of us make mistakes. We hurt people, don't even mean to. We make responses sometimes that are not the proper response. And so what we have to do is ask God to forgive us, and then we ask the person to forgive us, and then we may say to them, appreciate you bringing this to my attention, and I will do my best to not let it happen again. It depends on what it is. You see, every single time what you're doing is you are expressing value in the fact that this person was willing to confront you. Now, if it's something that you have done wrong, then you ask for forgiveness and say, you know, I'm going to do my best to do better. If it's something that they've accused you of that you're not guilty of, remember what you said. You said, I'm going to consider what you're saying. And so you are placing value on that person, especially if they do this in a very gentle spirit. Well, I appreciate that very much, and thank you. And then you might say to them, well, is there anything else? Now, especially if somebody's getting on your case about something and coming on strong and they just letting you have it. And you're sitting there and you're being very quiet. And when they finish just blaring at you, you simply say, is there anything else? And that's the right answer, because sometimes they're dumbfounded by that. Because first of all, they've expected you to get angry and you haven't. They expected you to defend yourself and you haven't. They expected you to verbally attack them and you haven't. And so what you've done is you've responded in a godly fashion, and you're simply saying, is there anything else? And then you might say to them, I appreciate this because this is going to give me an opportunity to grow in my Christian life. Now, think about this. If you respond in the right way and what they say is just invalid as it could be, it's not something you did, and you say to them, this is going to give me an opportunity to grow in my Christian life. You say, well, what does that mean? Here's what it means. By your being able to withstand an onslaught of criticism, and you very courageously, boldly, submissively to the Father, do not blare back. Do not defend yourself. Don't attack them. What's happened is you're learning something about yourself. That God has worked in you such a spirit that you can take an onslaught of criticism, and you don't have to blare back. You don't have to defend yourself. And what you've done, you have demonstrated to the other person a very godly spirit. And what you've said to them, because you see, they're standing there getting on your case and wondering, why don't you act like they know they would act if you did that to them? And they can't figure out, how can you be so quiet while all this is going on? And then when you say, well, is there anything else? That really buffaloes them, because they think, well, I've said everything I need to say. And they'll probably say, well, no, there's not. Or they may say, oh, yes, there's one other thing. Well, thank you very much. Because what you want them to do is to get it all out. And your response is going to be a loving response of receptivity, whatever it may be, right or wrong. It may be partially right, partially wrong. Doesn't make any difference. What you've done is you have dealt with criticism in such a way that God will honor you in the process, strengthen you, build you up, and enable you. And so that's the wrong way and the right way to deal with criticism. Now somebody says, I'm glad we're off of that one. Well, what about the whole issue of praise? How do we respond to praise? Most people will think, well, man, I can handle the praise. Not always. I can handle the praise. It's that criticism that bothers me. Well, let's look at it for a moment and ask ourselves a question, too. And let's go back to this 27th chapter a moment and look at that second verse. Remember what he says, let another praise you and not your own mouth. So we know right up front, we don't have any business going around waving our own flag and telling everybody how well we are doing and bragging about it. And so let another person praise you. And then in verse 21, we're tested by the praise accorded to us. That is, the way you and I respond to praise sends a big message. And we all know people who can't handle it. They can't handle praise. And so let's look at this for a moment. Now, praise can be just as destructive as criticism. If a person responds in the wrong way, it can be very destructive. We just read the verses about how pride causes a fall and the consequences of that pride. So how do we respond in the right way when it comes to this whole issue of praise? Well, let's define terms. Let's distinguish between praise and flattery. Now, there's a difference. For example, listen, when it comes to praise is simply this, and that is, it's really sharing a genuine appreciation for someone or their work or what they've done or how they look or how they dress, whatever it might be. You're sharing a genuine appreciation for that person. Now watch the difference in this. Flattery is calling attention to something about that person's looks or works or so forth, but expecting something in return. In other words, when somebody's flattering you, it isn't a genuine appreciation for who you are, what you do. But flattery is calling attention to some element in your life, or maybe your looks or your work or what you believe or whatever it might be. But beneath all that is a genuine desire for something in return, which means that flattery is deceitful. It is a form of deception. It's counterfeit. It is not of God. And when I think about people who do that, and there are people who do that, they'll walk up to you and tell you something good, and somehow if you're a discerning person, you can discern, you think, now what do they want? Because it may be that they've done that a number of times. Now, don't blame your kids for that. In other words, kids, a daughter, she knows how to get her father's attention. I mean, let's just face it. She does love you. She may be saying, Dad, you're just looking especially good today. Dad, I'm telling you right now, I'm so glad you're my dad. In fact, there's no dad in the world like you. Now, let me tell you something I had in mind, Dad. Then it's coming. So we're not talking about that. That's just natural. But when somebody comes onto you, and they begin to flatter you, and next thing you know, they may not ask for it at that time, but they may come back a little later, and you say, you know what, now I know what you are after. That's flattery. We're not talking about that. We're talking about genuine appreciation for someone else. And so when you think about that kind of praise and how God works in that, let's just think about it for a moment. What's the wrong way to handle praise? Now, I want to be sure you understand this and that I'm not misunderstood, because I don't want to be criticized for it, but if I am, okay. Now, watch this. If somebody does a good job at something and people just praise them, maybe stand up and clap and carry on, and they... Let me just say this, that if you do a good job and you're doing it for God, we all know it. In other words, you don't have to parade the fact that you're giving God the credit. God knows your heart, and that's all that matters. Now, if something in you just said, man, I tell you, when people bless me, I just have to give him credit. Okay, if you just have to do it, and it's for real, okay. But don't do that because you want to appear to be godly. Appear to be giving him credit, especially if you walk off the stage with this egotistical, prideful attitude. So I don't have time for you. Sorry about that. You know what? It's all fake. It's not for real. That's not the way you respond to praise. some kind of public show. And as I said, if somebody genuinely feels that, and oftentimes a person can be a little immature early in life, and I understand that. I'm just giving you a little warning, because it can become a prideful thing, and it can become sort of a cover-up for something that you are feeling. Then a second thing, when somebody is praising you for something, don't look the other way. In other words, if I walk up to you and say, you did a fantastic job, don't say, well, thank you very much. I do appreciate that. Now, if a person has a poor self-image, that's sometimes what they do. I'm just saying to you, don't do it. In other words, if somebody wants to praise you for something, look them square in the eye and say, thank you very much. That means, first of all, that they heard you. When you walk up and say, you did a fantastic job, they heard what you said. And you want to be heard. So look them in the eye. And you don't have to parade it around. Just say thank you very much. Now, when you say thank you very much, don't add an explanation. Well, I could have done better, but it's the best I could do today. And I was a little sick yesterday, and I know my hair's not exactly right today, and my dress doesn't, fit. In other words, don't give any explanation. Now watch this. Sometimes a person may compliment you or praise you when you didn't do a very good job. You know you didn't. But you know what? They love you enough to say, you did such a fine job. Well, now don't say, well, you're just saying that. You don't mean that. You're just saying that. In other words, this is not for real. You're just saying it. Don't respond in that way. Just say, thank you very much. Now, if someone compliments you or praises you for something, you might say to them, well, thank you very much, and tell me why that, in other words, put it this way. You want to find out, what is it that you did or said that caused them to want to compliment you or praise you? And you might say to them, well, thank you very much, and you might ask yourself the question, what did I say or how did I do that brought forth this compliment or this praise from them? That is, you may learn something, what they say. Or you may respond in this fashion. Well, thank you very much, and you certainly encouraged me by that. Just express gratitude, not any kind of defensive, fakey stuff. Just tell it how it is, how you feel. And what happens is they get blessed, and you get blessed in the process of doing so. Then here's the thing that I want to say the strongest. There are two words I want you to write down. The first is deflect. D-E-F-L-E-C-T. Deflect and redirect. What in the world's that got to do with this? Well, it's very important. Because here are the results. When you do this, and I'm going to explain it in a minute. When you do this, this will protect you from becoming prideful and arrogant. It'll protect you from becoming what you do not want to be. And especially if you get lots of praise about things. So what do we mean when we say deflect? Here's what we mean. When somebody praises you or expresses their gratitude or thankfulness for something you have done or whatever it might be, how you look, whatever, when they say, well, you did a fantastic job, here's what I mean by deflecting. Immediately you say, thank you, Father. Thank you very much. What you've done is received their blessing, their appreciation, sent it, your thanksgiving straight to God. Because you and I know the truth is anything good comes from us ultimately has its source in Him. And so you immediately, you immediately deflect. That is, it bounces into your heart, out of your heart, straight to Him. So that you don't say, well, I must really be doing better these days. Thank you very much. You don't have any of that. You say, thank you, Father. And there are two times that I always say that. Not most of the time, always. When you live as long as I have, you finally learn a few little things. Number one, you say it immediately. Thank you, Father. Whisper that, thank you, Father. And secondly, when somebody says, I've got a question I want to ask you, I always say, thank you, Father. Whatever's coming, I want to help me out, if you will. So that's deflecting it. You don't take it unto yourself. Now watch this second one. What do we mean by redirecting? Now let me give you an example, An example is the best way to explain this. Let's say that you as a lady, you walk into your Sunday school class or on your work or wherever you are, and two or three other ladies, and then they say, my, you look stunning today. Wow. And the woman says, thank you very much. My husband loves to take care of me. Now here's what you just did. You took the praise and you reached out and you wrapped your arms right around him and shared it with him. Now you think about this. How many of us do anything that somebody else doesn't have a part in some way? For example, on your job. Somebody says, you get promoted for something, and they just praising you and giving you an award and all this other. And the wisest thing you can say is, thank you very much. And I am grateful for my staff. Or I'm grateful for this person who stands by my side. And I couldn't do it without so-and-so. Here's what that says to people. It speaks of your humility, that you recognize that you're dependent upon God and other people. And you know what it does? It builds a wonderful team spirit with people, because they think, you know what? He's getting all the recognition, but the truth is, he didn't forget us. Or she didn't forget us. And it's not that they want it. It's just the fact that it says something about your character, your relationship to God, and your relationship and your understanding your dependence upon other people. And when you think sometimes fathers make decisions, and they need to hear their children say, Dad, I'm on your side. And I can remember one time, and it's hard for me to tell it. I had only been in Bartow, Florida, this past the First Baptist Church, about 11 months. And God just sent me this signal so strongly in prayer one day that he was going to move us to come to Atlanta. I didn't know it then. I just knew he was going to move us. And so then when I finally found out what he was doing, my concern was that my children would have the right attitude about it, because we'd only been there about 13 months at that particular time. And we lived down the street from a big lake that we could fish in, and there was a big pit, a big quarry that Andy and I could go practice shooting in and so forth. And so it was just a nice little place for me to be the pastor and just sort of enjoy life. It didn't last long, but anyway. So I thought, I got to find out how my kids are going to respond. So I said, Andy, let's just take a bicycle ride, which we did oftentimes in the evening. So we went riding, and I said, Andy, and I asked him this with fear and trembling. I said, let me ask you a question. If I told you that God may move us to Atlanta, Georgia, which is a big city, what would you say? He and I were just riding along. I'll never forget this answer. He said, well, Dad, every time God has told us to move before, we've done it. He's always blessed us, so he'll bless us again. I'm telling you, I knew that had to come from God. It was just a way of expressing, and it gave me assurance of something in my heart that I wanted them to feel a part of. And that's why all of us have to be sensitive to people around us who help us in ways that oftentimes maybe they think that we don't even realize it. And to encourage them by involving them and including them is very important. And what that does, it protects us from becoming prideful, arrogant, self-sufficient, adequate within ourselves, as we would say, or overlooking very valuable people in our life. If you will learn these principles of how to deal with criticism and praise, here's what you'll do. You'll have a sense of peace in relationships. You will draw people to you. You will be a healing, calming balm in some relationships where people don't know how to handle that. And also you'll be a very strong testimony to people who live on the edge. And you've heard people say, well, I have a short temper and God knows it. Well, we all know it. And so what happens when you respond in a godly fashion like that, eventually they catch on that their attitude, God didn't make them that way, that's just the way they are. But God didn't make them that way. And what we're doing, we're simply living out the life of Christ in our attitudes toward other people, no matter how they respond to us. Jesus never said, "Get off my back. You have no right to criticize me." Can you imagine the kind of wilting look when somebody criticized him and he looked through eyes of perfect love straight at them? They must have walked away, wondering why. My desire for you is that you and I would learn how to accept criticism and praise, that we can have the fullest impact possible as we allow Lord Jesus Christ to live his life in and through us in those difficult kind of times that all of us have to face in life. And Father, how grateful we are we have the Holy Spirit living within us to enable us to respond the right way in love, in forgiveness, in kindness, and in gentleness, no matter what. And we know that you will use that to bring yourself glory and honor. And that's our prayer in Christ's name. Amen.
让那欢歌主导自己来去。